with you, because that's a person who can take you where you want to be. And
To carry the synchronicity, it's just too good of a story not to tell. I had a manuscript under consideration with a very small startup publisher based out of Denver, and the editor from that publisher was in New York at this conference this past weekend, and I happened to be on a panel that was talking about things like synchronicity, and so I gave this example from my own life. It has a lot to do with dates. My wife was born on November 13th, 1973, and the gal that I dated prior to my wife happened to be born on the exact same date. You know, it's just one of those things. Of course, the two people that I've actually dated in my life being born on the exact same day means a lot to me. It's a meaningful coincidence. A couple of hours later, the editor was in the actual meeting. A few hours later, he came up to me and he said, "I just wanted to let you know, my birthday is November 13th." So,
Wow.
you know, is it just luck? Probably, but those little things mean things to the people that it actually happens to. So put yourself out there, make those kinds of gambles sometimes, be true to yourself, and sometimes it pays off.
You want to know what's even spookier? My son's birthday is November 13th. Not really, it's the 15th, but it's too good a story.
I'm reminded of that movie. What was the movie where there was a murder in a motel and they were all there and they're all born on the exact same day?
Oh, yeah, it was a good movie.
oh yeah,
So-
right.
What was
John
that?
Cusack.
John Cusack,
Yes.
exactly.
All in John Cusack's head.
So, yeah. So, but put yourself out there a little bit. The Steve Earle thing paid off. Sounds like I'm hearing a thesis here, though, or a theory. Song titles might be worth titling your first novel after here. I don't know. Note to self. Do we have any more questions?
I've got one. Did you set out to write a series, or did you do it based on the success of your first novel?
I didn't, it wasn't actually a series until about halfway through the first draft. I was thinking, I wasn't really considering further. See, the first book was not outlined or planned at all. It just sort of happened. Since then, I've started, being a little more deliberate, outlining a little bit more, partially because my publisher demands it. But so it did not start off to be a series, but about half, three-quarters of the way through it, I started thinking this guy could be actually a pretty good series character. And so then I realized, of course, that I couldn't kill him off by the end of it. That's always one of the big challenges in series is creating a real sense of risk. I always ask people who write series books, how do you do it? I mean, because the series character is not going to be dead by the end of it. You don't want to kill off, the beloved sidekick. So actually creating a sense, in a standalone, everybody dangles over the abyss. But you got to create a sense of risk. And what I do, what's at risk in the Jack Keller books is Jack's sanity, because he's really sort of a guy on the edge, and so that's what you're really beginning to wonder if he's ever going to make it back from some of these things that he has
Can I
to do.
piggyback on that and just ask you, when drawing from your own experiences, how closely do you follow a character based on somebody else, and how careful do you have to be about
I get far enough away to avoid lawsuits, basically. It's people ask me, there's sort of the Devil's Right Hand features a sort of small-time criminal as its centerpiece, a guy named Dwayne Puryear. And people always ask me, do you know any Dwaynes? So I know thousands of them. Because, and it really is a situation where, and one of the things I wanted to do in the books is sort of show the true face of murder and the true face of crime. A lot of these things don't start off with somebody intending to kill somebody. It's just a colossal series of screw-ups that turns into an avalanche that turns into this huge bloody apocalypse. And that's one of the thing that I see a lot. I mean, we've recently, I was talking with a new friend over here about a murder that recently happened in my home county, where these three guys broke into a house that they thought was deserted. They thought it was the middle of the day, and 12-year-old girl was home sick, and surprised them, and they killed her.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
And just absolute tragedy from so many ways. You want me to get that? And that's really how it happens a lot. It's not anything that anybody set out to do. It's just sort of a cascade.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
In terms of the publishing process, is the process the same for nonfiction as for fiction? Basically,
No, I understand. I don't really have to tell you about nonfiction because I don't do it. One thing I do understand is that you can sell a nonfiction book on a proposal. You don't have to actually write the whole thing. But of course, then you've got to be able to make the publisher or the editor or the agent believe you can write this. So usually those tend to be done with people with already have some journalistic chops and things like that.
If I can.
Or a website that you're actually disseminating information already, which is a really, really good way for you to, if you're thinking about doing a nonfiction book, I know that if you set up a website and you're already giving top 10 ways to parent a cat or, whatever, that shows a publisher that you've already got a following, so.
I interviewed J. Peter Zane this past week. He's the former books review editor for the News and Observer, and he's published 2 nonfiction books with W.W. Norton. And because I get that question, that exact question asked a lot, I asked him on the TV show, how did you sell your nonfiction book? He sold 2 nonfiction books to W.W. Norton. And the first book was Remarkable Reads, and it was basically a compilation of essays where he threw out an adjective to somebody, typically a famous writer, like name the book that is the blank, and then the writer, say Stephen King or whoever, would choose the adjective. Maybe it would be the weirdest, or the freshest, or the bloodiest, or whatever, and then they would write an essay on that book. And he said that he actually sold that book after he had compiled a few of those essays. Now, keep in mind, he was the book review editor at the News and Observer from 1996 until this year. By the way, that video, if you're writing notes here, is online at howtopublishabook.org, as will be the video tonight, as will be every video for the TV show. We're doing an author interview TV show here in Raleigh that airs on Raleigh Television Network Channel 10 Sunday nights at 8:30 p.m. Now with the second book, his second book, which was nonfiction as well, it was, the title of the book is The Top 10. And basically he asked writers like Dusty and Alex and John Updike and Stephen King and writers in that league
Yeah, I know. Keep going.
to list their top 10 favorite books of all time. And he tells a really interesting story about that in this interview, which is online at howtopublishabook.org, he started with like 10. He had his wish list of 10 people. He didn't have a publisher at the time, though he had published 1 book with Norton. And he got maybe half of those people who responded and were interested. Based on that half of maybe 5 people, he then went out and got 5 or 10 more. And he started doing this week after week, and he said once he got about 60 or 70, and his ultimate goal was to get 125 lists, but once he got about 60 or 70, that's when he contacted Norton and said that he had this nonfiction book called The Top 10. So he was able to sell it to Norton with half of the book done in that particular case.
Because they knew that he could finish it, they had enough for the rest. So.
That's a good question, though.
Alex, you brought up websites. I think for a nonfiction author, that's probably a good deal. What are your thoughts on web presence for aspiring authors of mystery novels?
It's very important. It's very important because the more and more I'm hearing that editors and agents, the first thing they do is Google you and see if you have your own website or blog. So, of course, like, what do you put on it? But if you are a journalist, that's a really good thing. And if you're not, then just having a live journal where you're talking about your thoughts, or if you put together a group of aspiring authors, or you get in with, what's a smart thing to do, and a friend of ours, a lot of friends of ours have done this, that when you're about to be published, that you link in with one of the existing blogs. We're on one of the big mystery group blogs, Murderati, and people who want to get out there as a web presence comment on those big blogs like the Lipstick Chronicles and Murderati, and for romance it's Squawk Radio and the Fog City Divas, and you can get to know people in the genre and editors and writers who can help you by commenting intelligently on blogs. And
Intelligently is the key word.
yeah, intelligently is really key. And then if you have your own blog, then people who like what you have to say on those in the comment section will go to your blog, and you can establish your own kind of community. But it helps if you have a focus to it, the blog. But definitely anyone who wants to be submitting should figure out how to do it. And it can be only just a one-page website. But another thing, let me pass this around. My printer ran out of ink. I usually pass out a handout of these things that are internet resources for writers. And I do have a section on how to start a blog and all of these things. So if you want me to send you that file, sign up your email address and I'll get it out to you in the next couple of days.
Any other questions?
This is one of the things about blog commenting is one of the ways I knew that I was spending way too much time on the internet is when I went to the first Thriller Fest, which is the International Thriller Writers Convention in Phoenix, and about 8 or 9 people came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, I know you from such and such blog. You're a comic, you comment," and I have my own, and it was all different blogs too, you know, but that's actually not a bad thing for an aspiring writer, because some of the people that were coming up to me were people like Lee Child, you know, and I say, "Oh, I know your blog," and I'm like, "Great," you know.